PowerPoint presentation a little better. And you notice it's way up in the corner, so we're going to try to see how we can reassign that. In the meantime, let me try to engage you. I'm not sure how many of you would have done any particular research or anything, but cybersecurity is a body of technologies, processes, and practices designed to protect networks, computers, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. Most of us would have what is called malware protection. We have it on our phones, we have it on our computers, but we need something better than just the malware. You would have heard of several websites, being attacked and taken control of. That is why we need cyber security. Our main facilitator will give us a guide as to what and the hows so that we can access and achieve it.
That was half the presentation right there. Morning again, everyone. While they get things set up, I just wanted to point out for those of you who may not know, there is an extremely high amount of firepower in this room from across the region. And I think that is a very positive sign. We have, as you heard, representatives from the Caribbean Network Operators Group, the Internet Society Global, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN. And coming on via video conference later will be representatives from the Latin American Internet Registry, LACNIC. And there's a reason why all of these organizations have seen it fit to participate in this first cybersecurity event here in St. Vincent. And I really want us to take note of that. There is no way that anyone, any country, or any organization can go about the business of cybersecurity without such collaboration and without such cross-institutional, cross-jurisdictional, cross-organizational support and teamwork. And it's important for us to see just in the structure of this event and in the structure of the agenda, how that collaboration is borne out. I'll be giving a keynote on the state of cybersecurity, some of the global trends, but also honing in on what's happening in the Caribbean. But the point of the presentation really is to allow us to understand the components of cybersecurity that you'll be hearing elaborated as the days proceed. So what I want us to do as we go through this morning is to take note of some of the points. This is a symposium. And the idea is not to have one-way traffic from the podium. As a matter of fact, wait not for the recording, I would take this microphone and be walking on the floor and talking and sharing with you. But the point of this activity is to start a new discussion, a new dialogue within St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a first point, a touchdown point, if you will, for a discussion at the OACS level for how do we react and respond to the growing cyber threats that we're facing. And that's what I want us to be focusing on. So we're going to take note throughout the day, and we're also encouraging you to engage the presenters, not just in session, but at the breaks and after the breaks, so that we can have a real discussion on what are the priorities for us. There are a set of things happening globally, but as you heard from Dr. Thompson, the trajectory of global affairs is not always in the interest of our Caribbean or our Caribbean priorities. But for us to take our own place and have our own voices heard, we have to be very clear and very definite about the positions that are important to us. And this discussion in St. Vincent is being recorded, it's being captured, it's being tweeted, it's being streamed, so that St. Lucia, Dominica, Grenada, Antigua, Anguilla, Montserrat, and the other countries in the region will understand what is important to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we have the commitment already of the CARIBNOG group, which is a group of network administrators, computer professionals. We have their commitment that anything you say you need, any support that you deem appropriate or required, guys and gals from across the region will be mobilized to lend that support. And I want to give you that assurance, Dr. Thompson, that this is not for us an event or a set of presentations, but is a start point for defining a Caribbean approach to what is a growing and very serious Caribbean challenge, cybersecurity. Y'all with me on that? Could we agree on that? So that a conversation towards solutions. I was looking at some of the past presentations made across the region concerning cybersecurity, and there was this very troubling common thread to many of the presentations, and that was a sense of pessimism that the Caribbean is all talk and no action. That my country and everybody's country is the worst. My country is not doing anything about cybersecurity. But then you're hearing that expressed in countries all over the region. And for many persons, the understanding of what actually is being done doesn't make the headlines. Right? So you're not going to read in the newspaper very often that, well, the government is partnering with the Organization of American States on a joint cybersecurity training initiative, or that the OECS signed a partnership with the Caribbean Telecommunications Union to define a common regional cybersecurity strategy. These things don't make headlines, but they're happening. Are they happening as much or as deeply as they can? No, there's still room for more. But there's a missing ingredient in the Caribbean's response to cyber security. And that's one of the things that we will be looking at. The missing response is the voice of the people. The mobilization of stakeholder groups outside of the, let's call it the geek tier, the hardcore network administrators. That voice is missing from the conversation. And so there is a diminished or a diluted understanding of just what's at stake here. All right, so we all hear about and read about the headlines and the hacks in North America, but what's the St. Vincent response? What can or should the business community be doing? How do police officers respond when you go and say, I think I've been the victim of a cyber crime? And I can give you some of the responses. One of them is, I'm ashamed to say this, but this is not CSI. We can't help you with that. Try unplugging the computer from the internet. You all spend too much time online. These are very real responses from law enforcement officers across our region. Oh, something happened with your daughter. Some boy got her photo and put it online. Well, she shouldn't be using her cell phone. Why you give her a cell phone for? These are, I'm not making these quotes up. These are real life, real Caribbean tales when people who are the victims of cyber incidents go to our law enforcement agencies. And so if you only have a solution that is, let's see if we could protect the networks, but nobody's training the police officers, and nobody is training the school teachers, and nobody is training the judges and magistrates who see these cases coming before them with increasing frequency, do we have an effective cyber strategy? And so again, I repeat, the solution involves widening the conversation and increasing the dialogue among stakeholders who may not always see themselves as part of the problem-solving side of the equation. So I think they're waiting on my machine now. So you're following me with the conversation. So when Roxanne said we have to have a cybersecurity symposium, my response was we have to make sure it's not only a cybersecurity symposium. It's not only a collection of technical persons with technical interests looking for technical solutions to what is a societal challenge. And so she widened the net, and I think based on the agenda, successfully engaged the larger community. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's on. Everything connected, yeah, waiting. So I may be the victim of a cyber hack right now. I think somebody's got access to my machine and is preventing the signal from going to the projector. I just think you need to set it to HDMI, that's all. The machine is showing it as connected. Dun, dun, dun. Ladies and gentlemen, cybersecurity, threats, challenges, and opportunities. I really feel restricted behind this podium, you know. All right, we can all see the screen. All right, so as I said, we're going to be looking at the issues of cybersecurity. I admit upfront, my objective is to shock you and scare you into a whole new sense of the urgency of the situation that we face, right? Full disclosure. But my objective is also to ensure that we have a sense of some of the very real solutions and strategies that should be taken. So we live in a digital world. We've heard that in the opening remarks and greetings, persons were referring to the fact that we have in the region a proliferation of devices. We have increasing access to the internet. We have more and more persons going online. As a matter of fact, based on one of the last International Telecommunications Union statistics, the region is in fact one of the fastest growing regions in terms of internet adoption. And that's a good thing. But the other side of that increasing adoption is that each new wave of users coming onto, let's call it the local internet or the Caribbean internet, has less technical understanding and less computer literacy. So we have more people going online, but less people understanding what it takes to be safe online. And that's part of the digital world. Large penetration of mobile devices, more people signing up for mobile data plans, and more people enjoying the benefits of the internet and the connected world. So e-commerce is on the rise across the region. One interesting statistic out of Trinidad and Tobago is that the largest vendor for credit card services is no longer the local supermarket, it is Amazon, right? So more purchases using Trinidad and Tobago issued credit cards go to fulfilling Amazon payments than any other national or local service in the country. And those things tell a very interesting picture. People are signing up for and embracing this whole notion of a connected, convenient, accessible service delivery platform that the internet represents. And of course, you would also have heard that the telecom providers are bemoaning the fact that you're not making calls anymore. And you're no longer using their services for long distance calling, and SMS is on the decline, and people are using these tools called WhatsApp and all these other over-the-top services, and nobody's using their cable channels. They're using Netflix and Hulu. This is the real world. And what is happening is that this thing is creating a wave of possibility. New entrepreneurs are rising up and saying we can build apps and we can launch solutions that deal with our local markets using the internet as a global platform. And that's a good thing. That's the digital world. That's where we are. That's where we're going. It is an inevitability in the economies of the future. But that digital world has a very real and very dark side to it. And we see the dark side reflecting itself in international headlines about hacks in the millions and economic incursions that are costly to companies and embarrassing to governments and really damaging to individuals. So whether it's cyber warfare or ransomware attacks, which are increasingly common now, cybercrime is now more profitable than the drug trade. Right? So these are interesting facts for us to understand when we talk about do we or should we have a clear approach to cybersecurity. These headlines seem to be headlines from other regions and other countries, but the only difference between the headlines that we're seeing and what's happening in the region is that we do not yet have a culture of disclosure in the Caribbean. But we are just as vulnerable and just as subject to these kinds of attacks. For those of us who work in the cybersecurity arena, we are dealing daily with compromises of government networks, banking networks, insurance company networks, and then some other curious things like school networks. The University of the West Indies, the community colleges are all finding themselves victims of various forms of cyber attack. And when you think about it, the irresistible push toward this digital future where everyone is going to get connected and everyone will have access to the internet and all of its benefits and glories. But this dark side where as we go online, we're increasing our vulnerability and we're increasing our risk to these kinds of attacks. What are we to do? And that's a dilemma some find themselves in. And Roxanne gave a very interesting analogy earlier when she spoke about you have to build a house because you need shelter. Because there is a risk or threat that somebody may rob your house or attempt to rob your house, should you not build a house? That's the same thing with the digital economy. The digital economy represents a global economy of the future. There is no Caribbean competitiveness. There is no national economic development without some dimension of intersection with the internet economy. But that internet economy brings its risks, and those risks have mitigation strategies that we have to all contend with now. So this gentleman put it very succinctly, and you would know him from his other headline-making functions in 2017. This is Robert Mueller, former director of the FBI in the United States. And he said this, he said there are only two types of organizations: those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. And I want us to understand the implications of that as we think about our own digital economy, our own move our companies toward greater automation and computer utilization, our own plans for moving more things online. Two types of organizations, two types of countries, two types of individuals. Those that will be hacked. How many people in this room have been the victim of an attempt at an attempt? You don't have to give me the success or failure of the attempt. An attempt to compromise your electronic accounts in any way. How many? Who don't have your hands up, you probably didn't even know, or you're just not willing to say right now. Because a spam attack is a form of cyber attack. A phishing attack is a form of attack. So if you have gotten any mail from Nigeria talking about your inheritance, have been the victim of a cybercrime if you clicked on it and said you wanted them to send you money, right? And most of us would have received such emails, right? Most of us would have received mails that purported to be from one organization and not. So this is the reality of the world that we're inside of. And so when we look at this issue and we put it against the Caribbean lens, we see some good and bad. On the good side, the Caribbean has the fastest growing internet rates, great adoption rates, etc. And that's a good thing, as I said. But the bad side is that a number of the successful hacking of public and private networks across the region has spiked. More of our networks are coming under attack. The good side of it is many Caribbean nations and organizations are already taking steps to increase cybersecurity awareness efforts. You would find that even here in St. Vincent, there are representatives from the National Security Services, from the Telecom Services, from the Foreign Affairs divisions who would have participated in some kind of cybersecurity training over the past 5 years. Right? There is more training, more meetings, more conventions, more seminars, more workshops, but then there are also more attacks. So the bad side of it is the region's fragile infrastructure and many resource constraints continue to make us particularly attractive to those who are plotting, scheming, and planning attacks. Right? We are what you call geographically a soft target. Right? The Caribbean is a soft target. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a soft target. And the reason we're a soft target is because there are so many deficiencies in the policy framework, in the legislative framework, and in the infrastructure itself. But then there are also deficiencies in the human resource capacity to detect, to respond to, and to thwart these kinds of attacks. So that's the reality that we face. This is a graph that simply shows the kinds of attacks that we've been seeing. And this one is from 2012. But you get a sense of everything, every area, every sector. Once it's connected, it is going to be subject to probing and subject to attacks. So there are reasons why, for the Caribbean, why we remain a soft target. And it is for these reasons, the lack of awareness, the absence of sufficient coordination, the ostrich syndrome, where, well, we're just a small island. We don't really have that much to steal, thief, or bother with. Nobody's going to come here. This is not a problem. It's not happening to me. 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 As a form of a solution. And of course, the talent shortage is a very real thing. These are highly technical attacks requiring highly technical responses. So why are things this bad? Why is this a global problem? Why is this a Caribbean problem? Well, in a word, people. If you look under the desk or under the keyboard or behind the monitor of most machines in most offices, whether they be government or private sector, you'll find somebody with a password stuck on yellow paper or in a notebook hidden in the second drawer, That's the reality of any human-based system. The technology could be as robust as you want. The human gateway remains one of the most vulnerable points of access. So I wanted to show this video. I hope, but I don't know if the projector is connected to the speaker system. If it is, I'll let it play. If it isn't, I'll just move on. But it was a really interesting test that was done a couple of years ago by Jimmy Kimmel, just walking the streets of Hollywood, asking people an interesting question. I'm going to try it and see what happens.
Cybersecurity lately, largely because of what happened to Sony. Companies and individuals are more concerned about the safety and privacy of their information than ever. President Obama has unveiled a number of new proposals this week to crack down on hackers, and he plans to address this in the State of the Union speech on Tuesday. And it's great that the government is working on this, but the truth of the matter is we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. You know, the most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on a Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
And the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. So you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. Mm-hmm. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th.
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland 1 2 3 4. Gemma 1 2 3. Spelled GEMMA.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
My grandma's name.
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is they learned
So in a word, people. You'll see how easy it is, right? Put a camera, and that's just in that case. There are all kinds of, we had a cyber security event in Belize, and one of the presenters from the United States got into a nuclear facility and got design plans for a reactor by simply looking the part. The clothes that they put on, the time of the day that he went in, the department that he chose to go to. And he walked us through what he did. And his job was to basically expose security weaknesses. And he didn't go to the engineering department. He went to the guys in marketing who had an image, a schematic for the reactor. And he essentially told them, you guys, nobody talks to you guys. I'm upstairs for management. I just came down to see how things are going. Can we just have a look at some of the work that you're doing? Anything happening on that reactor? Because that's a big project for us. And one conversation led to another, and walked out of the CEO, put it on the desk, and said, this is what happened today. Interesting thing about that story was that he also found in accessing the network where the plans were, that there were other non-company logins, active logins on the network, which he also pointed out to the security team. People, right? People. So you have a human-based system, device, your account, and you have the possibility that it could be compromised. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of cybersecurity, a world where we have to invest more in technology and have to invest more in these kinds of connected systems, but a world in which we also have to be a lot more conscious about what it takes to be secure. So let's talk a bit about the dark side. Today's cyber criminals are highly organized, highly motivated, highly resourced, and highly effective. When you read about some of the types of incidents taking place, you start to get a sense of a disadvantageous position that most organizations and most individuals will find themselves in. The same, as I mentioned earlier, this trade, cyber crime and cyber criminal activity, is now more profitable than the drug trade. And it's for the same reason that e-commerce is more efficient and more customer friendly than taking a car, going through traffic, bustling around with people to get to a store that mightn't have everything that you want. That same convenience applies itself to this activity as well. It's a lot easier to roll out of your bed, jump onto your computer, rob a bank of a couple millions, roll back into your bed and fall asleep, than it is to rent a car, plan a heist, deal with other persons, go in, have the risk of being shot or maimed. It actually makes more sense to invest in the technology for the criminals. And so a lot of the old school mafia type operations now find themselves investing in and participating in cyber criminal activity. So they have the international networks, they have the reach, they have the organization, and now they're applying it to cyber criminal activity. There was a recent incident in the Caribbean with ATM fraud. And when you pull the thread on it, what seemed to be a St. Vincent and St. Lucia and Dominica issue turned into an international ring. And they just looked at the region. Your bank is as good as any other bank, right? And they decided, well, this makes a lot more sense. So the risk profile of trying to engage in such a plot here in the region makes it an attractive proposition to someone. And remember, these decisions are being made on the same basis that business investment decisions are made. Pros, cons, risks, opportunities, reward, returns. And they look at the region and they see low risk, high returns. So what the heck? What's happening? What do they do with these networks and these machines that can be compromised? A lot of the other speakers will go into greater detail. I'm simply presenting the overview for you. Servers can be pirated and made to do things that are in the interest of the hacker. So whether it's storing somebody else's pirated content, or hosting pornography, or using your servers as a routing point for spam, whether it is harvesting emails from your organization or stealing your identity and repurposing it in some other jurisdiction. There are a number of things that a hacked network represents to the criminal establishment. And I'm saying network, but think network, think crediting personal information, think social media accounts. All of these things have value. And there's actually a marketplace for stolen electronic goods online. Accounts can be bought and sold. Credit card information can be bought and sold. And it's a lot easier to be on the dark side. How many of you are familiar with online learning institutions like Udemy, or Coursera and those kinds of institutions, right? You can go online and do your your research remotely, get your accreditation, and so on. Well, same thing is happening on the dark side. There are easily accessible, publicly available tools that cover the 101s to the highly advanced techniques for phishing, spamming, penetration, network penetration, network compromise, distributed denial of service attacks. You can literally take courses in how to do these things. And there was a very recent publication of some NSA level techniques that happened earlier this year. And so now that's in the wild. And so the most advanced hacking techniques are available to those who are willing to go into these kinds of sites and learn and expand their knowledge and deepen their skills and increase their competencies. Right? So this can be, and I want us to understand this, I'm not saying this, don't think about this in terms of someone somewhere else outside of this jurisdiction getting these skill sets. The region has amongst the highest unemployment rate per capita. But remember what I said earlier, we also have the highest increasing rates of internet adoption and connectivity. Match those two things, and what you have is a ticking time bomb, where an idle youth with access to these kinds of tools and without the moral compass to drive him or her in a particular direction can become the next army or next wave of cyber criminals, homegrown, Caribbean raised. You all with me? This is the reality of the region that we're inside of. The threats may seem now to be external, but the reality, if you track what is happening in terms of all of the developments in the region, from the economic decline to the challenges of employment, to the increasing access to the internet and internet technology, to these kinds of tools being available to anyone who has an interest, what you start seeing is a possibility, just as international criminals are realizing that it is easier to go online and conduct criminal activity than it is to take up a gun and go to a neighbor or a neighborhood store and try to perpetrate a crime. And so we have a very real threat. As I said at the front, my intention is to open your eyes to the reality of, we could talk about phishing and malware and all these kinds of things as if they were some distant neutral threat, but the truth is they are not. This is a reality that has already hit home. So what are we looking at next? What's up next? Future attacks will likely increasingly be directed to software attacks. This is from an extract of a report by the Organization of American States. Directed to soft targets in locations through which huge sums of money flow electronically for tax efficiency or advantage. Those areas with infrastructure links to the United States and Europe, like St. Vincent, and in areas where the success of a sector such as tourism is central to the stability of the regional or national economy. You all following me? The threat is real. And those who are looking on are already observing some very disturbing patterns in what is likely to be a Caribbean future if we do nothing. Another report said, as attacks continue or worsen in frequency and sophistication and focus not just on disrupting critical infrastructure, but also on compromising key information that could be used in the future, defenders may soon find themselves short in terms of the support necessary to stave off threats. The lack of funding and an unmet desire for government leadership in this area leaves defenders feeling increasingly left on their own. And so what you're seeing being predicted is this ominous notion that if nothing is done, if there isn't a coordinated, coherent approach, the region will find itself incapable of mounting credible defenses to these increasing attacks. A tipping point looms, and we cannot be idle. But all is not lost. While there's no silver bullet for cybersecurity, while there is no do this one thing and all will be better, there is place for a structured, well-coordinated, multi-stakeholder approach to this threat. And that's why the activities like that which has been initiated by the St. Vincent chapter of the Internet Society That is why groups like CARIBNOG and ARIN and ICANN and ISOC are all working together to try and ensure that we have both the awareness and the capacity to deal with this. How do we join the resistance and mount a credible defense? Well, it requires that strategies be actually defined, actual strategies be actually defined, and not strategies that are pulled from some Google search, strategies that are the product of a national conversation, a national consultation, a national discussion around what is the nature of our networks, our human resource pool, our defense mechanisms. People, analytics, intelligence, and technology have to be harnessed together in a coordinated way and an informed human development approach to security. I said earlier that the human gateway is one of the most vulnerable open points for attack. If we continue to deploy technology in our organizations, whether in the public sector or in the private sector or in civil society, if we continue to deploy technology without investing appropriately in human capacity building, making people aware of these threats, but also making them aware of some very basic things that they could and should be doing to keep themselves and their digital property safe, then we simply increase the vulnerability for attack. So these are things that we can do. Develop strategies in collaboration with business units. Embed security personnel into any discussion about what it takes to stay safe. Align the cybersecurity approach. I'm saying business goals, but think of it as development goals. If you bring value with your strategy, security becomes a differentiator. It's like Roxanne was saying earlier, it is just putting locks on the doors. It is as routine as ensuring that your windows have safeguards or that your homes and businesses have alarm systems. There are things that simply must attend the deployment of any technology in the 21st century. And validate these strategies at the leadership level. It's not sufficient for the IT guys to say, we need to do better with security. The heads of organizations, the heads of ministries, the heads of government have to say, this is important and worthy of investment, right? And then of course, because things are changing so rapidly, management must also be fluid and dynamic. How can governments help? Well, they have no cyber crime if it's not a crime on the books. You just have a cyber incident. Legislation has to be updated to reflect and to consider some of these new threats that we're facing to society. Participation in regional bodies, glad to say that that's already happening here in St. Vincent. Strengthening local capacity and raising public awareness, a key responsibility, I would say, of the local ISOC chapter. Setting national standards. This one is interesting because it refers to things like how do you and when do you disclose that you have been subject to attack? I'll give an example of that. The banks at present say that, well, we can't really say that we have been attacked because it will so shake our customers' confidence that they may pull a run on the bank and that will not be good for us or the country. But the truth is this, there is no country on this planet that has disclosed or that has disclosure laws or requirements that has seen such a run when the attack has been disclosed. So this false fear that is being put upon society that, well, you are not mature enough to take the truth that our networks are being constantly attacked is something that has to be challenged by the national community. Because there's the other side of it that the community may not always understand, and that is for every attack unreported, there are more attacks. Once criminals know that you're not going to say anything, well, ransomware becomes a recurring theme and cost of business. When it becomes a recurring cost of business, guess who pays the price? Anyone, wild guess, who covers that increasing cost of business? That is correct. So right now, banks across the Caribbean are finding that they have to pay increasing insurance fees because of their cyber vulnerabilities. Those fees translate themselves into some of these seemingly irrational charges that you are seeing on your bills. Now, nobody is making the connection between increasing hacks, increasing insurance costs, increasing consumer fees. But we want to make that an open national conversation and have a candid, mature discussion about what can we do as a society to help create a greater level of consciousness to these kinds of attacks because it's our money in our banks, right? And ultimately, our responsibility to ensure that we all play a part in defending and protecting our networks. And so this issue of standards apply to what does it take to ratify that our financial services institutions are playing their part to protect their networks and to not unreasonably toss that burden upon the consumers. Right? So there are regions who tell consumers, well, you have to change your password every 6 weeks and make sure it's not the same password you used over the last 6 months, which is what leads to passwords being stuck on screens and on the keyboards. Versus, again, a better investment in the technology that then says, I will strengthen my financial services sector network so that you can be properly defended on my side while you take appropriate actions on your side. And these are things that the public needs to know. And these are things that I'm encouraging you, Roxanne, and the Internet Society to raise as part of your campaign of public awareness as you move forward. How can industry help? Business community can track the trend lines. This thing is going in a very clear direction if you are looking. Support public and private cooperation. Government can't do it alone, nor should they be asked to do it alone. Invest in security tools and infrastructure, which of course implies that you have to know what the appropriate security tools and infrastructure are, which means partnering with groups and participating in fora like CARIBNOG to ensure that as a region we're moving lockstep in sync with these trend lines. And of course, the human factor, encourage and train and release cybersecurity experts into the field. That's the opportunity side for the region. We speak a lot about the threats and a lot of people focus on the fact of how bad it is, but the truth is there are opportunities for whole new areas of human resource development and the creation of human skill sets that can be deployed not just regionally, but globally. There is nothing that says, no rule that binds us from becoming a global center for cybersecurity expertise. And that's what these kinds of approaches will allow us to do. Awareness, investments, action. That's what we have to get to. Despite the hard-pressed budgets, despite the national security needs seeming to be insurmountable, the investment required in training persons, in strengthening networks, and in building new conversations at the national level are worth it. And I would put to you, are the only thing that stands between us and a very damaging, very dangerous cyber future. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to encourage, you to put your hands together once again for Mr. Gooden. He says that his intention was to give an overview, to whet our appetites, but I believe that he would have done extreme justice to this topic. At this time, we want to move into the question and answer period. And I know I have a couple of questions, but I'm going to make the floor available for you to share your questions that you may have available for Mr. Wooden. I see one person there, Mr. Wooden, you might want to draw a little close. We have a roving mic.
I have a number of questions, but I'll start up with one. Do you think here in the Caribbean we are extremely vulnerable to what we call social engineering?
Yes, that's a straightforward one. Yes, we are. And a big part of why we are vulnerable has to do with the level of, let's call it, technical sophistication of the internet users. We were discussing this morning a very recent example of someone calling an end user and purporting, for example, to be from the bank and using all of the bank protocols, good morning, Mr. Wooding. I'm just calling you to tell you that I noticed some suspicious activity on your computer while you were doing that banking transaction. Please like you to go to this place, and very professional spiel that was given. In the end, the person gave access to their machine, gave access to their account information, and transferred money to the caller, thinking that they were talking to the bank moving money from one account to a safer account. And when they went to the bank, we can't do anything in that case because you gave away your money, right? And these are very real things. And there was a period earlier this year when a number of persons got calls from persons purporting to be from Microsoft. And if you're technical in the room, you might giggle at this, but for non-technical persons, it wasn't funny. They were saying, go to this place on your computer. It was a CPU monitor. And you see that activity is spiking. That's somebody trying to hack your machine. You need to act urgently. And we notice this from our global data centers where we track these kinds of things. Give us your credit card now, and we can put a stop to it. That was an attack earlier this year. That wasn't just one country, it was across the entire region. And for everyone who gave that information and gave them access to stop this imminent threat, they got access to the contact or address books on those machines and then basically started to call over and over again and again. Are we subject to social engineering? Yes. Why? Well, because the technical aspect of getting online is not something that most people detain themselves with. And if you think about it, nor should they have to. Right? We can't expect, and I use the example of a grandmother having to become a technology expert to simply use the internet. So something else has to take place.
Another question I have. You made mention that companies now are investing a lot of monies in, and in recent times, the existence of cybersecurity insurance has come to the forefront.
Well, no, let me correct. I said insurance companies are raising the premium on cyber insurance, not companies investing in. Insurance companies are raising the premiums on cyber insurance because of the increasing incidence of cyber attacks.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Important distinction.
It is.
Yeah. Albert? And if just for the online viewers, if you can state your name and organization before you get into your comment or question.
Albert Daniels, wearing a PAS hat as Regional IT Manager for KPMG Eastern Caribbean, just to provide some additional information with regard to the question, is social engineering an issue in our region? I used to audit across the entire Eastern.
Albert, can you just pull the mic over here?
Yeah, can you, is this better?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I used to audit across the entire Eastern Caribbean. And as Bevil said, the human being, the individuals are one of the biggest problems when it comes to a lot of the incidents that we see with regard to cybersecurity. I'll just give one example. I think you have Rotary clubs here, maybe you have private schools, and what do you have in those organizations? You have an email address group with all the Rotarians, which could include people working at banks, lawyers, doctors, whatever. Or if you have other entities where there are large groups of email addresses. And next thing you know, somebody gets their hand on one of those groups of addresses and they want to sell some perfume or some Christmas toys or something, and they send out an email, and then you get that full list of addresses. You take that full list of addresses and you send out an email to all of them. Maybe about 3 or 4 of them will come back saying, well, my name is John Smith from First National Bank, and I am away on vacation. If you want to have something important to discuss, please contact XYZ person. So as a hacker, what do I know? I know that this person holds a particular title in a bank. I also know that they are away from their office for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So that gives me a window where I can, as a hacker, impersonate that program. And as Bevil said, speak to other people and say, well, look, my name is John whatever from the bank, from First National Bank, and we're having a problem with your account. It looks like there was this big transaction. Please confirm, with your personal details. The next thing you know, the personal details have been exposed, and that is an opportunity for a hack taking place. So one of the things that I think we need to focus on is how we as individuals need to change our behaviors when it comes to a lot of these things regarding cybersecurity.
Any other questions?
Yeah, while we get the mic over there, just to add to what Albert is saying, and I didn't mention it in my presentation, but for a lot of these organizations, and I really want to emphasize the fact that they at the upper tier of cyber criminal activity, they are highly organized structures. They hire persons to compromise bank officers to get the spiel exactly like you would hear from a bank officer, to actually get that script. But they also hire psychologists, people who help to shape the interaction and interplay between a victim who may think that something is wrong with this call, is not quite, and to give just the right amount of assurance at the right time to ensure that the sites that they carry them to look just that trusting way. Those things are not by chance. And this is not just, well, get a website guy and make it look like the other site. It's an organized, structured operation. And the operation has very clear, just like you would for any business strategy, we are targeting this group, or we are targeting that segment, or we are pinpointing this demographic. That's the level of detail that they get into. So when they get these addresses and they cross-reference it, they can work out the ones who are most likely to fall victim to such attacks. And the other side of it too that I want us to note is not every attack is obvious at the point of compromise. Some attacks are about getting into a system and just waiting, looking at data, increase, grow, looking at patterns, and then using that inside undetected footprint to do other kinds of attacks. So your database might get compromised, but you might never be attacked. You're with me? These are highly organized, highly motivated, highly resourced, highly effective structures. Question?
Yeah.
Again, I didn't get the name or the...
Jamal Charles, IT assistant at Yagal International Airport. You made mention about hacking, right? And from research I've done, studies, are all hackers bad hackers?
Absolutely not. So we have hackers in Caribnog. We call them white hat hackers, or
ethical
the
hackers.
good guys, ethical hackers. There are different names for them. They're people who use their hacking skills to protect networks and to expose vulnerabilities, like the guy I spoke about earlier, who did the job at the nuclear company. These are persons who use their understanding of network vulnerabilities, weak points, and attack vectors to help strengthen and to help increase the resilience of networks, the good guys. So in Caribnog, and Stephen will perhaps talk about that later, we have pen testing sessions where we train Caribbean persons to do penetration testing, train them to work effectively on monitoring and analyzing logs for anomalies and discrepancies. And those guys, they're hacking, but for the greater good.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Now, one of the things that we're going to have to take note of moving ahead is that one of the most problematic elements of cybersecurity is the quickly and constantly evolving nature of security risks. I think we would have started to go a little deeper into that arena. At this time, we're going to have a break, and we will reconvene at 11 sharp. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break.